The British government just tried to sell you back to the European Union, and they almost got away with it for months while you were working, raising families and living your lives. Keir Starmer's inner circle was systematically dismantling Brexit behind closed doors. No vote, no debate, no permission, just secret documents, hidden meetings, and a carefully constructed plan to drag the United Kingdom back into the EU without you ever knowing it happened until today. The Supreme Court just detonated a political bomb that's shaking Britain to its core. If you want the full truth about what they were planning, hit subscribe right now, because what I'm about to show you has been buried by the establishment for far too long. This morning, the Supreme Court released a devastating 76-page ruling that doesn't just reject Starmer's plan, it exposes it, it names names, it reveals the machinery of deception that was inches away from erasing the Brexit vote forever. And the documents they've unsealed paint a picture so disturbing, so calculated, that even Starmer's own MPs are running for cover. Here's what they found. Buried in classified memos and confidential emails is a blueprint for what they called regulatory harmonisation. Sounds boring, right? That's exactly what they wanted you to think. Because hidden inside that bureaucratic language were legally binding clauses designed to slowly reconnect the UK to EU institutions. First, mutual legal standards, then shared regulatory frameworks, then quiet readoption of European Court oversight, and finally, administrative integration so complete that rejoining the EU wouldn't be a decision anymore. It would be a formality. The British people would wake up one morning and discover they were back in the European Union without a single vote cast. And by then, it would be too late to stop it. The court didn't hold back. They accused Starmer's leadership of constitutional malpractice, an intentional circumvention of parliamentary sovereignty, and an egregious violation of public trust. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of the Supreme Court justices who reviewed the evidence, and they're furious. But here's where it gets truly chilling. This wasn't some sloppy policy mistake. This was a covert operation. Meetings were held in private residences and hotel rooms in Brussels. No official records were kept. Staff were told to leave their phones outside to avoid traceable communications. One document was hand-delivered through diplomatic channels and labelled non-disclosable under national security exemptions. Another was locked in a private EU consular office and only retrieved after a court order forced cooperation. These aren't the actions of a government making policy. These are the actions of people hiding something from the public they claim to serve. And then the whistleblower emerged. A single civil servant inside the government machine saw what was happening and couldn't stay silent. They leaked portions of the hidden agreement to independent legal watchdogs, who immediately filed for judicial review. That triggered a furious 5-week legal battle inside the Supreme Court that Starmer and his allies desperately hoped would stay out of the headlines. Today, the dam burst. The leaked documents reveal something even more disturbing. High-ranking Labour officials, policy advisors and former EU diplomats were all involved. One memo addressed directly to Starmer from a senior advisor openly discussed strategic alignment with EU legal bodies in preparation for full reintegration. Another referenced non-disclosable pathways to legislative compliance. This is the language of people who know they're doing something the public would never approve. And now the public knows. And they're not just angry, they're erupting. Within minutes of the ruling, social media exploded. Phrases like EU betrayal, constitutional coup, and democracy under attack started trending across Twitter, Facebook and TikTok. Live broadcasts were interrupted. Parliament fell into stunned silence. And then the protests began. London, Manchester, Birmingham, Edinburgh, Glasgow. Thousands of people pouring into the streets, waving Union Jacks and holding signs that read Starmer the betrayer, no to EU tyranny and defend Brexit. The energy on the ground isn't just anger, it's raw, unfiltered fury. These are people who feel lied to, deceived, used, and they want justice. Outside Labour headquarters, protesters have been chanting "Resign Starmer" for hours. Some have camped overnight. Police have had to form barricades. At one town hall meeting, a Labour MP had to be escorted out by officers after constituents erupted in chants accusing the party of treason. Inside Labour, it's complete chaos. Emergency meetings have been called. Staffers are reportedly deleting emails, and shredding documents. Senior aides are screaming at each other, frantically trying to shift blame. Shadow ministers are resigning. Local party branches are publicly disavowing leadership. MPs who once stood with Starmer are now scrambling to distance themselves from the wreckage. And Starmer himself, silent. Instead of facing the cameras, instead of addressing the nation, he released a cold 2-minute scripted video from behind a desk blaming miscommunication of policy intentions and insisting the agreement was non-binding and exploratory. But legal experts have already confirmed that's a lie. The language in the documents went far beyond exploratory. Several clauses had already been submitted to legal departments in Brussels for pre-approval. The machinery was already in motion, and the public isn't buying his excuses. Petitions calling for his resignation have surpassed 1 million signatures in 48 hours. Multiple polls show Labour's support collapsing in real time. Reform UK, Nigel Farage's party, has seen donations surge and membership registrations break records. Farage himself delivered a fiery speech outside Parliament, calling Starmer's actions an attempt to sell Britain like cattle to Brussels and demanding the resignation of every official involved in the plot. He's even floated the idea of a Patriots referendum that would constitutionally ban any future government from pursuing EU membership without a supermajority in Parliament and a binding national vote. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has seized the moment. In a statement outside Number 10, he condemned Starmer's actions as an unacceptable attempt to undo the will of the people through shadowy means, and announced plans to fast-track the Sovereignty Protection Act. If passed, it would make it illegal for any UK government to enter international treaties affecting domestic sovereignty without full parliamentary approval and a public referendum. The bill already has overwhelming support from Conservatives, Reform UK, and even some Liberal Democrat MPs. But here's the part that should terrify you. New whistleblowers are coming forward claiming this wasn't just a one-off plan. This was phase one of a much larger operation. Leaked strategy memos point toward long-term integration goals set over a 5-year horizon, including re-entry into EU defence agreements, environmental accords, and participation in a renewed EU political council under the label of observer status. If this had succeeded, Britain would have been locked into an irreversible legal dependency on Brussels. Not by name, but in every way that matters. Intelligence sources say MI5 and other security bodies are now reviewing whether foreign influence or covert lobbying played a role in pushing this agenda forward. Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee is quietly launching its own inquiry. EU diplomatic cables are being examined. Meetings previously dismissed as routine policy discussions are now under retroactive scrutiny. The question everyone is asking: how deep does this conspiracy go? And the answer is still unfolding. Markets reacted immediately. The pound dropped in early trading as investor uncertainty surged. International observers are watching Britain with concern, worried about political instability and potential civil unrest. Even European leaders, who have remained mostly silent, are reportedly furious behind the scenes over being publicly tied to this secretive UK political scheme. Back in Westminster, Parliament is bracing for one of the most volatile sessions in modern history. The upcoming emergency debate is expected to be explosive. MPs across the political spectrum are preparing damning speeches. Some are even threatening to cross the floor if immediate action isn't taken. Pressure is mounting for an official inquiry with full judicial authority to examine not only Starmer's actions, but the conduct of every official who had knowledge of or supported the secret deal. And the calls for criminal investigations are growing louder. Legal watchdogs and constitutional scholars are arguing that this level of intentional subversion, if proven, could meet the threshold for criminal misconduct in public office. The phrase treason by policy has even begun circulating in legal circles. The Crown Prosecution Service is facing mounting pressure to investigate whether any laws were broken during the drafting and proposed implementation of this EU alignment deal. This isn't just a political scandal anymore, it's a constitutional crisis, and the British people are not backing down. Farmers in Yorkshire, fishermen in Cornwall, manufacturing workers in the Midlands, communities that fought for Brexit, bore the cost of its disruption, and believed their voices mattered are now speaking out in outrage. They feel deceived, they feel used, and they're demanding accountability. Online platforms
in the biggest democratic exercise in the history of
images and legal analysis. Independent journalists are digging through newly released files. Hashtags like hashtag Starmer must resign, hashtag EUPoliticsexposed, and hashtag defend Brexit are dominating social media. Even Labour's own grassroots supporters are beginning to crack. Local Labour offices are being surrounded by angry crowds. MPs are being shouted down at public events. The unity that once gave Starmer the appearance of a steady leader has fractured into finger-pointing, paranoia and fear. If a general election were held today, early projections suggest Labour could lose dozens of seats in key battlegrounds. Many to candidates explicitly running on anti-EU, pro-sovereignty platforms. The political landscape is shifting rapidly, and Starmer's silence is only making it worse because the truth is already out. The documents are public. The Supreme Court has spoken, and the British people have found their voice again. They're not asking for transparency anymore. They're demanding it. They're not hoping for accountability. They're insisting on it. And they're making it clear that no government, no matter how powerful, has the authority to silently reverse a democratic decision made by millions of voters. The Brexit referendum wasn't a suggestion. It was a binding expression of democratic will. And anyone who tries to overturn it in secret will face the consequences. This is bigger than politics now. This is about whether democracy still means something in Britain. It's about whether the people still have a voice, and it's about whether those in power will finally be held accountable for what they tried to do in the shadows. The Supreme Court may have halted the plan, but the damage to Labour,
the biggest democratic exercise in the history of
is already done. The question now is what happens next. If you believe the British people deserve to know the full truth, if you think Starmer should resign, or if you stand with those defending democracy, don't stay silent. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video with everyone who needs to see it. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications because this story is far from over. New leaks are coming. New revelations are breaking every hour. And we'll be here covering every single development as it unfolds. The establishment tried to hide this from you. We're making sure they can't.